professor used the evolution theory from the viewpoint of Christianity, the thorough analysis of the descent or origin of man. Lecture 12, Chapter 8, Principles of Sexual Selection, continued. Throughout the animal kingdom, when the sexes differ in external appearance, it is, with rare exceptions, the male which has been the more modified. The cause of this seems to lie in the males of almost all animals having stronger passions than the females. Hence, it is the males that fight together and sedulously display their charms before the females, that the males of all mammals eagerly pursue the females is notorious to everyone. This shows that the male is the more active member in the courtship of the sexes. We are naturally led to inquire why the male in so many and such distinct classes has become more eager than the female, so that he searches for her and plays the more active part in courtship. But it is difficult to understand why the males of species of which the progenitors were primordially free should invariably have acquired the habit of approaching the females instead of being approached by them. But in all cases, in order that the males should seek efficiently, it would be necessary that they should be endowed with strong passions, and the acquirement of such passions would naturally follow from the more eager leaving a large number of offspring than the less eager. The great eagerness of the males has thus indirectly led to their much more frequently developing secondary sexual characters than the females. The cause of the greater general variability in the male sex than in the female is unknown, except in so far as secondary sexual characters are extraordinarily variable and are usually confined to the males. Through the action of sexual and natural selection, male animals have been rendered in very many instances wildly different from their females. But independently of selection, the two sexes, from differing constitutionally, tend to vary in a somewhat different manner. The female has to expend much organic matter in the formation of her ova, whereas the male expends much force in fierce contests with his rivals, in wandering about in search of the female, in exerting his voice, pouring out odoriferous secretions, etc. Sexual selection acts in a less rigorous manner than natural selection. The latter produces its effects by the life or death at all ages of the more or less successful individuals. Death, indeed, not rarely ensues from the conflicts of rival males, but generally the less successful male merely fails to obtain a female or obtains a retarded and less vigorous female later in the season. In regard to structures acquired through ordinary or natural selection, there is in most cases, as long as the conditions of life remain the same, a limit to the amount of advantageous modification in relation to certain special purposes, but in regard to structures adapted to make one male victorious over another, either in fighting or in charming the female, there is no definite limit to the amount of advantageous modification, so that as long as the proper variations arise, the work of sexual selection will go on. In order to understand how sexual selection has acted on many animals of many classes, and in the course of ages has produced a conspicuous result, it is necessary to bear in mind the laws of inheritance. Two distinct elements are included under the term inheritance: the transmission and the development of characters. But as these generally go together, the distinction is often overlooked. This distinction in those characters are transmitted through the early years of life, but are developed only at maturity or during old age. The same distinction is more clear with secondary sexual characters. It's because these are, though developed in one alone, transmitted through both sexes. The successive changes during the modification of a species may readily be transmitted in different ways, some to one sex and some to both, some to the offspring at one age, and some to the offspring at all ages. Not only are the laws of inheritance extremely complex, but so are the causes which induce and govern variability. The variations thus induced are preserved and accumulated by sexual selection, which is in itself an extremely complex affair, depending as it does on the ardor in love, the courage and the rivalry of the males, as well as on the powers of perception, the taste and will of the female. Sexual selection will also be largely dominated by natural selection tending towards the general welfare of the species. Hence, the manner in which the individuals of either or both sexes have been affected through sexual selection cannot fail to be complex in the highest degree. Sexual selection can never act on any animal before the age for reproduction arrives. From the eagerness of the male, it has generally acted on this sex and not on the females. The males have thus become provided with weapons for fighting with their rivals, with organs for discovering and securely holding the female, and for exciting or charming her through sexual selection. When the sexes differ in these respects, it is also, as we have seen, an extremely general law that the adult male differs more or less from the young male, and we may conclude from this fact that the successive variation by which the adult male become modified did not generally occur much before the age for reproduction. The above is the very core of the principle of sexual selection. Shalom.